Hello, everyone. This is Irina Dimitrova, host of the New Game of Leadership Online Summit and of the platform growandlearn.org. Today, I'm here with Saurabh Mishra, who is going to talk about decision-making under uncertainty and risks. Saurabh is the managing director and founder of pharmantra.ca. It's a consulting company, especially focused on the pharma industry, but he can tell you more about his services later. I'm very curious about our talk. I've known Saurabh for more than 10 years now. We did an MBA together in Barcelona, and he's still based in lovely Barcelona, where it's not sunny at the moment, but it will be one day, much sooner than anywhere else.
I know you are jealous.
A bit. Mostly of the memories, but yeah, no. Barcelona is a great city. Good to see you, Saurabh.
Thank you, Zorina. Thanks for having me. So I think I'll give a quick introduction, and then we can start. So I started Pharmantra in 2010, and mostly we focus on strategic CFO services for biotech companies, as well as we do early stage valuation as well. So in strategic CFO services, one of the critical element that we use is the decision making with the CEOs, okay? Because we have to take many important decisions with them. So that's why I thought maybe I could share this, with the audience as well, and that might be helpful for them in both professional and personal lives.
Of course, we take
Right.
decisions every day of our lives. So, how do we make proper decisions? What do you teach the executives?
No, actually, it's not kind of a teaching, but rather it's a kind of ongoing process, which I use. So let me start with you with one or two questions, right? So that will help to kind of build the case. Imagine, let's say, if I understood right, maybe I think 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you quit the company and then you have your own venture right now, right? Um, let's make two hypothetical scenarios, okay? Let's say one hypothetical scenario is that you are right now very, very successful. You are like one of the most famous coach and so on, right? You enjoy the work. You have grown maybe 5 times, 6 times in terms of number of people, revenues, and so on and so forth, right? At this point of time, if that is the case, what do you think was your decision to leave the company and starting your own venture? Okay. What do you think would be your answer? Was it a good decision or was it a bad decision?
Sure, a great
It's a good
decision.
decision, a great decision, right? Now let's consider a hypothetical negative scenario. Okay. And in that negative scenario, let's consider right now that it didn't work well. You struggled a lot. Things are not going pretty well. Both financially, in terms of popularity, in terms of competition, and so on. So now, how would you consider your decision? Would you consider that you still made a good decision, or was it not a correct decision? You should have evaluated better.
I think the example is not so black and white for me, especially because
Yeah.
I would have left the company probably anyhow. I would have just
Anyhow.
gone to a different job if it didn't work out well with my venture. So
Right.
in my case, it would have been a good decision anyhow.
Cool, perfect. So what happens is that, but in general, if you see, the reason I ask this question is, in general, what happens is that when we take a decision, right? If it turns out good, we tell that, okay, we made a great decision, right? And if it turns out bad, then we say that, okay, no, it was not a great decision. Actually, this is the process. This process is called resulting. Because what you are doing is, or a psychologist call it outcome bias, because they feel that based on your result, you're making a kind of this one, a decision that it was a bad decision. But actually, it's not the case. Why? Because when you make a decision, there are two elements that is very important. One is whether you have perfect information or not. Of course, in terms of uncertainty, we do not have perfect information. We have imperfect information. And then another important point is the randomness or the luck, that you could have. I'll give you a simple example. Last year, I know some of the restaurant owners, Indian restaurant owners here in Barcelona. Okay, one of them uh, kind of, I would say, is successful. Okay, have a couple of here and then in Ibiza, for example, and they decided to have another style restaurant. They planned it in 2019, and they were supposed to kind of get started in maybe April or May, something like that. Okay, in 2020. But as you know, COVID, came, and you can understand the restaurant business, right? If you look back, if you ask them, would you say that the decision that they made was wrong? The answer is actually no, right? Because there is certain element which is not in our hands, okay, which is luck. Okay, it could be good, it could be bad. Okay, now I'll give you another example. In summer, I received the email that the school of my daughter will be opened. Okay, now I was following some of the very top experts in US. Okay, um, who were the one of the few first persons to kind of warn about COVID in January. Okay, and they were very worried about opening the schools. They talked about, they had certain links that it is spreading and blah 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 and all that stuff. Okay, with that intense, I was also a little bit worried that okay, if my daughter goes, she will get it, and then we'll get it, and so on and so forth, right? The typical fear you have. So I wrote an email to the concerned person, to the school, that look, it's great, I understand that you have to open the school because it's a matter of revenues and all that stuff, but I think you should take a look at these links. There has been a super spreading event in US and so on. There is a chance that if you open the schools, whatever, tragedies could happen, whatever. We have a social responsibility, blah blah blah. Today, if I look back at what I wrote, and I even had a chat with a particular person, in fact, my decision about this was not correct. The reason was not correct was, at that point of time, I had an imperfect information, right? That children would kind of super spread. But if you see right now, childrens are not super spreading. Okay, right? So my decision was wrong. So I was evaluating why I made that particular decision at that point of time. So the one of the flaw in my reasoning was that I was looking at only one point of the view. I was not looking at the other side. What I mean by that is, even experts are wrong. Okay, so if I'm relying on just one expert, for example, for that link, I should have also taken counterpoints to understand that was it really that super spreading of the children and so on, right? So you see there are two elements involved here. So if you have to make a good decision, right, so you have to have right information. Of course it can be imperfect, but for that you have to talk with not just one, rely on just one information or one source. You have to rely
Because
on three or four. Yeah,
because the sources of information that you're looking for are also biased.
exactly, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly, that's the point. So so in order to improve this decision making, right, I think it is important to understand two elements of our human nature. Okay, that is actually a barrier to a good decision making. First is our ego. Okay, and the second is the blind spot. Okay, so I'll explain a little bit, a couple of minutes, just how our brain works, to understand the ego. Okay.
Before we begin,
Yeah.
Saurabh, let me just announce to all the participants that they can ask questions in the chat, or if they want to ask a question live, they can still unmute themselves. Just that I am recording, so you will be on the recording. So unless you want to be on the recording, type your questions in the chat.
Yeah, and feel free to have coffee as well. That's okay. So I was talking about how our brain works, right? So in our brain, we have this emotional part, the craving for desire, fear of survival, fear of being attacked, and so on, fear of being loved, and so on. That resides in the primitive part of the brain called amygdala. Okay, uh, and on the other hand side, we have a conscious, okay, logic, reasoning, part of the brain which resides in the prefrontal cortex. Okay. Now these two, this conscious part, it's not aware how our unconscious part works actually. Okay. Although it has been shown that with more practice and so on, like meditation and all that, you could have a link between the conscious and the unconscious mind. Okay. Now, this emotional part, right, which is in the amygdala, okay, it likes praises, right? You praise somebody, they feel happy actually. Okay. Because so there is a constant fight between this lower you can say, which is emotional part, and the higher you, which is the conscious and logical part. Okay. So think about it. You decided that you don't want to take sugar. Okay. You have a very good diet for 1 month, but then you are invited in a party and you see a hot chocolate cake. Okay. And finally you couldn't resist and you decide to have one spoon, right? What's happening at that point of time is that your lower you, the emotional part, has kind of overpowered your conscious or logical decision making actually, right? That's why you decided to forego your whatever diet plan and then have this hot chocolate cake. Okay. Now think about what happens when somebody disagrees with you in the meeting. So as our brain is, that's how it is wired. So when somebody disagrees with you in the meeting or something, then the emotional part consider it as an attack. And that is why we either get angry, we either get defensive, unless and until you have the attitude of keeping the very open mind. I'll give you one example. I was talking with one of my cousin who might be 15, 20 years older to me. He's a doctor. And I was talking about, there is a very interesting book called The Salt Fix. Okay. I'm forgetting the author, but he talks about the myth that having more salt will increase the blood pressure. So he has in his whole book, he's talked about how in the initial 1904, just based on 6 experts, these things started moving. There was a lobby of sugar, there was a lobby of salt. I think the lobby of sugar won, and what is right now. Many people are obese, because of eating a lot of sugar. Okay. So while I was talking with him, he said, no, no, no. Anything, any food we eat has sugar and salt. So whatever you eat extra, salt, it is going to harm you. I said, no, no, there is a new, book, but he was not ready to listen to me. Okay. Because there are several aspects. One is, as you can understand, experience brings ego, because you think that, I know more than you. Okay. Second is the cultural environment you are in, that also brings a lot of ego. So for example, in my culture, India, we have a hierarchical culture. Okay. And we respect a lot of people who are elder to us, for example. So that also brings a kind of ego. Okay. That as I'm elder to you, then I know more than you. Okay. But what happens is that in this particular process, or even power brings ego. You will see powerful people, or success brings ego, right? Once you become successful, you stop responding to your friend's email, whatever. It's a very normal human phenomena. You will see, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So, but what's happening in this particular process is that you are not able to make a good decision because you are not ready to listen to a contrarian point, which could be right. So the way the discussion I could have witnessed was that, okay, oh, which book you are talking about? Okay, let me read it and see, was it based on any clinical study or something? What are the arguments in favor of having a salt, for example? I expected that, but that was not the case. And it's very normal, that you see even in your meetings when you have with your professional people, you will see that it's very difficult for people to listen to your arguments, because what happens is, it's a surprising thing, because we are considered that humans are rational, but actually 90% or 80% of the time we are irrational, because what we do is that we already come out with our belief first. So ideally, to make a good decision, we should first do a lot of research. Okay. And do a due diligence, and then we should have our belief about something. But it's the other way around. We come out with a belief first, and then we try to explain that belief without reasoning.
Yeah, that was explained actually. I remember in a TED talk, I can't remember by whom, but they actually said 90, something like even 99% or something really huge of all the decision making is done on an emotional level first, and then you rationalize it by finding a
Yeah,
proof to what you have already decided.
exactly. So, you know, and I have been, I think I might have mentioned to you, I was very fascinated with Ray Dalio, who started Bridgewater with the whole argument of radical transparency. Okay.
Mhm.
And that is his whole idea, which I also inculcate at Farmantra, where I'm always eager to listen to somebody who might be, let's say, even 15 year 20 years younger to me. Okay. Because it helps me to understand how do I know I'm right. Okay. Because the important thing is that on a sheet of paper, if you want to put down how much you know about the world versus how much you do not know, how much you know will be a kind of dot, and how much you do not know could be a whole. If you kind of whole, like a circle, or let's say a big something shape, right? uh, I think if you kind of put on a scale basis, right? So having the humility to at least start with that yes, I do not know everything, is the first step for a good decision making. Okay. And that comes with one barrier, which is ego. Okay. um, Another is the blind spot, which is, I could also explain it as an inside view and outside view. So let me explain. um, One of the time, one of our project was to work on a financial planning, okay, of a very young company. Okay. And I was very fascinated, and I'm myself, as a finance person, I'm more fascinated was instead of accounting balance sheet, I should put a finance balance sheet. Okay. So what I did was that, in the accounting balance sheet, you have assets, liabilities, and in the financial balance sheet, I put assets as, okay, value you get from existing assets and value that is going to get from the growth assets. Okay. That was a kind of concept. What happened was that my client got completely confused. And he even sent me a note saying that, I'm really worried if I have really, taken a right decision to hire you. So, but I got the point. The point was that I was able to understand everything because I was looking from my point of view. Okay. But a person who is not from finance background, okay, who is from the science background, he's looking from his point of view. Okay. So that's an outside view. And I'm talking about my view, which is an inside view, and which is a blind spot. So I understood the problem. I said, don't worry about that. Okay. And then finally, I have learned, that lesson that, you have to look from the eyes of your client or the other side person. Okay. And then I completely changed it, and the result was that was one of the best financial planning that we did it for one of the client. It was a huge learning for us, right? So if you see the decision making process in the normal times today, when the world is very polarized, okay, um, try talking with somebody, especially politics. It is so polarized that the other side, actually, I want to find a person whom I can sit down and say that, look, in my country, okay, I understand that, there is a problem. This is X, Y, Z. Um, what is your counterpoint of view? But it doesn't happen like this. Okay. The other side comes with already their own belief, okay, with set beliefs, and, they are not able to listen to you. And that's why the world is getting more polarized and polarized, right? Okay. In this point of view. So I think if we focus on these two aspects, I think more than half of the decision making process, we are going to kind of, remove it, the barriers of a good decision making actually. This will at least increase the probability of making a good decision. There is nothing called a perfect decision making, because as we said, there is something also called randomness or luck, in the future, which we do not have any control, right? But at least it will allow us to increase the chance or probability of, making a good decision.
So
Does it
how
make
can
sense?
we? It
Yeah.
makes absolute sense, and I absolutely agree that that the world is very polarized, and I can see this that it's almost impossible to talk to anybody on the topic of the day because they're so ingrained in what they believe in that it's just impossible to pierce and think and even have a conversation about the other point of view. All right. So how do we think in terms of probabilities, and how do we estimate
Yeah.
The likelihood of a probability turning up true?
Yeah. So
I have actually a question.
Yeah. Yes, Ines.
I was asked by my colleagues from CTBTO, the UN, to join this conversation and this presentation.
Welcome.
And thank you. We are with 4. I thought it was a bigger group, but everybody would be joining in later on, probably.
Or watching the replays. Depends, it depends what time it is. For some people, it's inconvenient. Yeah.
Yes. I have, talking about the blind spots, I have a question. You know, we have in Austria at the moment this discussion going on, or this back and forth discussion going on about opening up the gastronomy or the sector from restaurants and cafes, etc., in a situation which is actually, it's not a lockdown, a post-lockdown situation, but you know, the discussions in any case. And I've been also thinking, why is this such a difficult discussion between the people heading the sector, managing the economy, and also the politicians? And you said something, Mr. Mishra, about the blind spot. There is somewhere a blind spot which is not being looked at. How do you see this? Because I understand you are in Spain.
Yes. Yeah.
And you will have probably the same situations.
Yes.
Could I have your thoughts on this, please?
Yes. See, I think, you know, one of the important reasons of having this huge difference of opinion, right, is that, you know, this social media and the internet, you know, has given us huge benefit, but it has also resulted in, you know, many wrong things like fake news, conspiracy theories, and so on, right? And you know, we all human beings are different, you know, are wired very differently, so we cannot think, you know, alike on each and every topic. Okay, so if let's say majority of the people at least think that in order to make a good decision, I should always rely on 3 or 4 or 5, you know, experts also cannot be right, then the situation gets easier. But that doesn't happen in the, you know, practical world, you know. So what happens is, I'll give you a couple of examples, and which is very, very similar to there, right? So you have people who are, let's say, for example, people like me who have kids. We are so busy that we are not able to at least understand the problems of those people who are bachelors, who might have maybe lost a job. They do not have to do anything, for example. They seek out to go out and dine with and socialize with their friends, right? More than maybe myself, because I'm already very busy with my kids and family, for example. Okay. uh, so so they have their lobby where they argue that, you know, they should go out, you know, and have, you know, nobody should stop the freedom. There is nothing called uh, COVID. No more people die with, you know, flu than whatever, and all those arguments, right? Even car accidents and so on. There is, of course, but a small amount of understanding, both parties, you know, uh, as I said, looking through their eye lenses, will help to solve the problem like this. So I can understand their problem, that yes, you know, they would like to go out and socialize because either, you know, they are, it's a matter of depression if you are in lockdown and you're not able to meet people, because we as a human socialize. On the other hand side, they should also understand the risk associated with it. So I always explain to people who have uh, arguments, who bring that, okay, look, you know, many people die of flu, we are not closing down. Or even one of the friends argued that, you know, there is a huge poverty right now, and poverty is a very big problem, so we should focus on that rather than doing this. I mentioned to one of my friends that, look, if my flatmate is poor, that will not make me poor. Okay. But if my flatmate has COVID, I have a very high chance that, I could get it, because the risk is multiplicative, you know. Okay. So this sort of discussion have to take place between the both parties in order to understand each other, in order to solve this problem. Because otherwise, and another important point which I'd like to make is that we always try to seek perfection in anything. So think about politics. We always try to seek that, they should come out with a foolproof solution that should work for everyone. It cannot happen. When you seek perfection, and then you are always disappointed. So you have to see that any political party in any country, you have to see whether there is a positive asymmetry or not. That means that you cannot expect, that whatever the wishes you have, all your wishes will be carried out by the political parties, right? But at least, they have more positives than negatives. If you can bring these kind of arguments into the picture, okay, then, I think the discussion will be, and last point is that, we common man actually, cannot right now make any changes in the decisions made by the political parties. So there is also a frustration, from that particular side, right? Right now, for example, in UK, there is a discussion about vaccine passport, which I also do not consider to be, right, because if you try to force something on anyone, there will be a backlash. So instead of that, the argument should be more persuasive, right, rather than, forcing, because we as a human being, uh, we could be cajoled, we could be persuaded to do something, if you are it could be, because if you we can use our emotional part of the brain, to kind of do that, right? So for example, the government can say that, look, if you do not take vaccine, your grandmother would be in a danger, right, or something like that, but if you try to put down this kind of argument, there will be more polarization. So I mean to say, there is no foolproof answers to your question, but I think, in terms of blind spot, I when I of course I work in science area, I understand a lot of scientific aspect, but I also try to, when I talk with people who are against vaccines or something, I also try to explain the rationale, why vaccine, came so fast. Okay, because right now it's a new technology, and the whole world was focused, only on COVID, although there were, negative effects of that as well, right? So I think, I don't know if I answered your question, but, that is a long answer, but, that's how we could do it.
Thank you.
If I may add to this question, there was a presentation earlier this week by David Savoy. It was called Trust as an Invariance of Leadership, and it had to do with trust, how trust is created. And he gave a lot of examples of images created throughout the history of humanity, starting from the time of Hitler's Germany. Then he gave a few examples of tests when people actually completely forgot their humanity and pressed the electrocution button for other people. It was just a test. So based on the images and on the belief they were projected, they moved away from their humanity, basically, and they said, okay, this person needs to be executed. And something like 80% pressed the button. It was a test. And it was not the only one done, but you can hear more about the experiment in the video if you watched it. Yeah. So the question, yeah. So the question is, in the end, what kind of images are being created in the world, by whom? And so this is how we believe, how we can understand what the two groups trust in and believe in, and this is how you can decode what is behind the images and what people trust in, because in the end it's about belief.
Exactly. So Zorina, when we are talking about how can we increase the probability of a good decision making, okay, so I think, a basic understanding of probability is very important. Okay, it's not nothing very complex math or something, but let me give you a couple of examples. Okay, I was, I was having dinner with my client, and there were other people as well. And I was surprised to hear that, one of them, he was afraid to fly always because he was afraid that, the flight might crash or something like that. Okay. Now here, a basic understanding of probability is important because the chances of a flight crash, okay, it's like, I don't know, 1 over something million times or thousands, whatever the probability that, the flight would crash. Okay. Now think about it. When 9/11 happened, okay, uh, long years ago, okay, in US, it was seen that most of the people prefer to drive by car rather than take the flight because they were afraid of doing that, okay, by flying, okay, of flying. Although the fact is that the probability of a flight crash, okay, or even the terrorist attack, is much lower. The beauty about the flight crash is that once we have the flight crash, the chances of happening the another crash reduces because the safety is so tight, is strong, the operations that it makes it more anti-fragile, I would say. Okay, so the more flight crashes we have, the more we learn from it, and the less chances of having a crash. Okay, so now think about, let's say, another example. If you smoke cigarette, okay, the chances of you having a lung cancer is, I don't remember the exact number, but let's put it 30% or 40%. Okay. Now, it's an absolute risk. Okay. So what does it mean? It just means that it doesn't mean that if you smoke, you will get it. Okay. But the chances of having, it is very high. Okay. So if you have to make a decision, okay, between smoking a cigarette, with all due respect of if all those who smoke, okay, smoking a cigarette versus taking a flight, which one is more riskier? Okay, of course, smoking a cigarette is riskier, because it has a higher chances, because it simply means that out of 100 people observed, whatever, or a study done on 100 people, 60 people who all the people who smoke, 60 got cancers. Okay. Now, so one is the understanding of the probability. Okay. And one thing is that another school of thought who tries to use probability a lot to make decisions. So I'll give you one simple example I have, which I would like to read out an excerpt from Barack Obama. Okay. Now I'm not Barack Obama, but and of course, but you will see what he writes in his memoir about the decision making. Okay. He tells, my emphasis on process was born of necessity. What I was quickly discovering about the presidency was that no problem that landed on my desk, foreign or domestic, had a clean 100% solution. Okay. If it had, someone else down the chain of command would have solved already. Instead, I was constantly dealing with probabilities. A 70% chance, say, that a decision to do nothing would end in disaster. A 55% chance that this approach versus that one might solve the problem. A 30% chance that whatever we choose wouldn't work at all, along with a 15% chance that it would make the problem worse. Okay. Now, I want to ask you, or all of you who are there, when you're making any decisions, do you kind of use these probabilities, saying that, okay, there is a 40% chance that I will be successful, 30% chance that I won't be successful? I don't know, have you ever used it? I have never used it myself. Okay.
No, it's more like an internal judgment that you go through. It's
yeah, it's very subjective,
yeah,
right?
it's
I
very
mean to say.
exactly.
So the point here is, now let me give you an analogy to explain what I'm trying to explain here. When we go to take a flight, our bags are checked and all that. Why do you think our bags are checked? Because there could be a chance that out of million people traveling, maybe one or two might be a terrorist, for example, right? But if you think about, we not all of us are terrorists, right? Maybe in a small percentage, if you see the probability, that will be very, very small tiny percentage. But still, the checking is being done. Why? Because of the terrorist attacks that could happen, although chance is very, very small. So it's not the probability that matters. It's the fragility that matters. It's the payoff that matters. You see what I'm saying? So if you have to make a decision, you can come out with any probabilities, that's fine. Okay. But the payoff is what should drive your decision making. So let me explain. If you are trying to, let's say, you are a company, you have 1 million in your bank, okay, you want to raise money, for example, you go out in the market and you say that, okay, look, for this I have to raise 10 million, okay, because this 10 million will allow me to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, now the way I think, and this is from another school of thought, is that I could say that after talking with investors that yes, there is a 70% chance that I could raise 10 million, 20% chance that I could raise 8 million. I could go via that route. Okay. But I would rather think, what is the payoff if I'm not able to raise 10 million? Okay. What is the impact that, that would happen, that will it impact my company in any way? Will we not be able to catch up with whatever the milestones that we decided to achieve, for example? So the consequence or the impact of the probability matters more than the probability itself when you want to make decisions in your day-to-day life. Now, as I said, Barack Obama is on another level. He is using different probabilities to make that particular decision. But I think that's another school of thought. I like the another school of thought which says that understanding probability matters, of course, but in day-to-day decision making, instead of calculating how much probability it will be, I would rather see what is the payoff of that particular probability. Okay, and that matters more, of that. So I think the concept of probability in that sense is very important in making a decision. I don't know if I explained it well and it's understood, right?
You explained it very well, yes. If I may just add maybe for clarification. So if I want to raise money, it doesn't matter what the probability is if I want to raise money for a startup. If I manage to raise money, great, great outcome. If I don't manage to raise money, what am I losing in the process? Am I losing my time? Am I foregoing revenue that I would have gained otherwise if I didn't spend my time raising money and so on? This is what you mean, correct?
Yeah, actually, yeah. So the consequence matters more, so let's think about the lockdown. Okay. Initially, the lockdown was being done because if it was not done, the whole healthcare system would have collapsed, because there would be so many people, coming. So the whole idea of lockdown was not to stop the virus. Okay. Virus couldn't be stopped with the lockdown, but initially was to control so that doctors get some time to prepare, for this eventuality and so on. Okay. So now, if you talk about any decision making, any critical decision, whether it is you want to look for a new job, you want to join a new university, you want to join this one, I don't think, practically you can think that, okay, if I join in this new university, there is a 40% chance I could go into investment bank, 30% chance I could get into consulting. I don't think, it could work that way, right? But I think it could work definitely this way that, okay, if I invest this much amount of money in this B school or something, what happens, if I let's say, what is my negative payoff and what is my positive payoff? Okay, will it help me if I fail? What is my impact on my investment? Where I'd be in terms of changing my career and all that? So I'm going to see the impact of that particular probability. Let's say that there is a school which is specialized in consulting, for example. There is 80% of the students are hired by consulting companies, for example. Okay, and you are very much interested in consulting. That's why you decided to apply for that. Okay, so if I have to make a particular decision, I wouldn't make a decision based on that just the probability. I would just try to make based on the payoff. Okay, so this understanding of that particular probability increases. I'll give you a simple another example. Let's say you're an investor, right? You decided that and there is an it's a correct story also, which Nassim Taleb, if you know the author, talks about it. He was a trader. Okay, he said that he was having a discussion with somebody about some investment in one particular stock or something, I don't remember, and everyone was in a unison that there is a 70% chance that the stock will go up. Okay, but he had shorted the stock. Okay, then everybody was like, but you said that there is a 70% chance that the stock will go up. But he said that yes, your stock price, if it goes from 41 to 42, right, 41 euros to 42, versus if you think that this stock can grow from 41 to 2 euros, for example, you see the impact of that 30%, right? So this is what I was talking about, the impact, of, or the consequence or the payoff. Okay, so here the probability, doesn't matter. So your probability is that, okay, yes, there is a 70% chance the stock will go up, but if it goes up by just 1 euro, it doesn't have that much of impact than the 30% chance you think that the stock will go from 41 to this one because there is some internal mismanagement or whatever it is, right? Or some project fails or is going to fail. You think about that, right? So that's the explanation, about that. The payoff matters more, than probability in day-to-day, decision making.
But
and of course, it also comes. Yeah.
Excuse me. This leads me very nicely into the next question, which has to do with the with consecutive decision making. Because let's say the stock, if we take this example, was to move indeed down by, I don't know, the huge amount.
Yeah.
What would be the next move after a certain period of time? Would it shoot up right up, or would it again go down? And for how long are you going to hold this stock? And this is just an example to say that decision making in the end is not a one-time event, as I see it, but very often you would have to then consider it like a chess game. What is my next move? And it branches out. So when you think of decision making and probabilities, do you branch them out, or do you suggest, because then it becomes a bit too complex?
See, decision and risk cannot be separated. They are together, because whenever you make any decision, right, there is a risk attached to that.
Right.
So talking to your problem, if I think that, let's say, imagine I had not sorted the stock, which the other guy had sorted. Okay, I thought that 70% is going to go up, so I would that. I have to evaluate here that the risk of ruin. Okay, so if I am ruined because if I made an estimate that 70% the chance that stock will go up, but the stock moves to 2, for example. So I will have to either the company, let's say, goes bankrupt or something comes out, and then I'm already ruined, and if all my portfolio is in that particular company, for just making a hypothetical example. Or so in any decision making, we have to understand that risk, the risk of ruin, how impactful that risk of ruin is, and whether you would be able to reverse that decision or not. So I like the decision making. I think in the Amazon shareholder letter, Jeff Bezos talks about irreversible and reversible decision making. Okay, so he talks about that in many of our decision making, there are many decisions which we can reverse, but there are many decisions which we cannot reverse. So those decisions which we cannot reverse, we should spend more amount of time in analyzing, understanding, getting different viewpoints on that. And those decisions we can reverse, okay, we can be faster, right? So it makes so intuitive sense, right? So for example, you when I started Farmantra, I was thinking that, okay, what if I fail, I'll go back and look for a job. That's a reversible decision, right? But a irreversible decision would be that, okay, I'm in the life sciences for, let's say, 20 years, and after 20 years, it's like a midlife crisis, and I want to need a change and work in a blockchain or whatever it is. It might be very, very tough, right? So that decision would be irreversible. So I'll have to really think about that. Should I get into life sciences domain or not, right? Because changing that particular whole domain, if you work for 20 years, 25 years, it's not that easy, to get into a different domain, actually. Okay, exceptions, of course, right? So I think, I like, these kind of mental models, to help you to make a better decision. Okay. Another mental model which I like it very, very much is subtractive knowledge. Okay, I'll explain what it is. And it has helped me a lot to, you think. I always believe that, if everybody thinks the same, you don't have an advantage in decision making. Okay, so you have to think very differently, on that. And in that, this subtractive knowledge, or via negativa, it's called, it helps a lot. So what it is, you know, we know more about what is wrong than what is right. So let me explain. I can We can discuss, let's say, many ways that how can we be successful. Let's say, how can Farmantra be successful, or how can Grow and Learn be very successful, right? You can jot down 10 or 20 paths that we could take in order to make it successful, but we do not know which one will be successful, right? Any of them could be successful, but we are not very sure about all those 10 paths. Okay, but we will be more confident about how we could fail. So how can Farmantra fail? We could fail if I'm very rude with my clients, with my word of mouth. The clients will talk to other clients, and then or my work is below average. Okay, I could fail. If let's say I think that the projects will come out of thin air, and I don't work, I just sit down. So if I know these points, what I will do is I will not do these points in order to be successful. So let's put it this way. You can grow rich by not overspending. You see, living beyond your means, right? And this is one of the factors also. Chess players do not win by plotting strategies how to win. Rather, they win by plotting how they should not lose, actually. Okay, so this
I'm
is a
not quite
very
sure though. I'm not quite sure you can become rich by not spending. It's always the upside risk taking that brings people money.
no. Okay, that's a different discussion. What I'm saying is that if you live beyond your means,
Right. Aha.
okay,
Right. Yeah.
you can use your money in different investment portfolio, whatever. That's different discussion. That's not what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm trying to say here is that the negative knowledge or subtractive knowledge, okay, is more robust than positive knowledge. Okay, it's not perfect, but it is more robust to error than the positive. Let's say, for example, we know that luck plays a role, in luck and skill both plays a role in somebody's success. Okay, now if somebody is very successful, okay, it is very difficult to say whether he's successful because he has skills, okay, or whether it was luck or something. But you could definitely say with more confidence that a person who does not have skills will eventually fail in the future. You see, maybe he is successful right now because he got a lottery, for example. Okay, but he doesn't have any skills, will eventually fail. You can tell with more confidence,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is what I'm saying. So another this related concept is also called, I think, inversion, which is used by, I think, Charlie Munger, if you know Warren Buffett fame, okay, which he talks about that. He tells that in order to be successful in investing, he talks about, okay, or in general life, he talks about that. I want to know where I am going to die. If I know where I'm going to die, 3, 4 spots, I won't go there. You see, so how can you use that in your decision making? If anything, let's say you want to whatever, start a business or whatever it is, right? You have to see, instead of, okay, positive thinking is nice, it sells, how to be a millionaire and all that stuff, right? Okay, but I think you learn more by failures than you learn only through successes, because you cannot replicate other successes, but you can learn a lot from the other failure, right? So here you can put down that, okay, what are the ways in which I could fail. Okay, and if you know that these are the reasons you could fail, your chances of survival increases, right? So I think these are very interesting mental models that you could anybody could use, okay, in the decision making process. It's not easy because our human brain is not wired to think negative. So I'll give you an example. I was talking with one of the scientists, and talking about the clinical trials, okay, and I said that, look, can you tell me in what ways the clinical trial could fail? And he couldn't understand my question. I said that, look, we know that the success of clinical trial is like, I don't know, in phase 3 is like 3 or 4%, right? All other fail in phase 3. So definitely, even if you think about, how this clinical trial is successful, it's not in our hands because human body is very complex. How it reacts, it's so complicated, it's very difficult to tell. But if I'm able to understand that, okay, what are the ways in which I can fail, I won't take that particular route. And he thought about it, and then he talked about that. Yes, that's interesting. So in this patient population, if I don't take this patient in our trial who have taken my competitor's medicine and blah blah blah, then our chances of success is higher, right? So what's happening is there. What's happening here? You are increasing your chances of success in your decision making. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. So so we started with the resulting, right? We talked about that as a human being, when things go wrong, we think that, oh, we made a bad decision. And I'm sure even your friends would say, oh, look, there's always a hindsight bias as well in us, which we say that, okay, look, I told you, that I asked you not to go to that particular path, right? And
yeah,
you didn't listen to me.
This instead. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'll tell you a very interesting story. 20 years ago, 25 years, when I was traveling and trained in India, so thefts and all that happen very rampantly, okay, especially during night. So this was a night coach, so you sleep whole night and then next morning you wake up, okay. So I had my suitcase there, and I sleep very well, okay. So I slept, and then all of a sudden at around 3 o'clock, I was putting my hand and I saw that my suitcase is not there inside this one.
You didn't sleep over it. You didn't sleep on it.
No. So finally, I was like, oh my God, somebody has stolen this one, and the other, who were sleeping also, everybody woke up, and then, look at the reaction. You know what? I was thinking there was one guy who was roaming around, and he was doing this. I thought that he must be the thief. Somebody was telling, yes, he was sitting there, and that's why I think he would be the guy. The point is that you always try to explain what has already happened. It's called hindsight bias, right? You always, I mean to say, if you really saw that person, why didn't you tell? You could have stopped, the guy from, taking my bag, right? But we human beings, we have this resulting problem, So how can we improve, this resulting problem? So we talked about 2 barriers, right? One of the barrier, ego. Another, we talked about blind spots, and then understanding of the probability, understanding of the payoff of the probability, understanding, let's say, yeah, you have a question.
The version was really good.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I have a question. Where do you leave intuition in decision making?
No, it's a very good question, actually. Intuition or gut feeling that you talked about, right? Now, I'll tell you, there is a 2 schools of thought here. You might have heard about Daniel Kahneman, who got very famous about the biases and all that, right? He argues that we shouldn't make decisions on gut feeling. Okay. On the other hand side, you have another school of thought by Gerd Kikerenger. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his German name right. His school of thought is that, and I kind of agree, is that when you're talking about any decision with huge uncertainty, which is, let's say, 3 years down the line or 4 years down the line, there less is more is better than, let's say. So there, your gut feeling, your intuition matters more. Okay. But of course, you need to kind of cross check, with other people as well to make a good decision, right? So think about it. Let's say a professional player, for example, football, okay, Messi, if I'm a naive guy, I don't even watch football. So if I have to start learning football, the coach will tell me, if Messi is my coach, he might tell me that you have to hit the ball at this angle and so on, right? So there, my skills and all that stuff matters more. But Messi will not use that he has to hit the ball at this angle, to goal it, right? He has this, experience and this intuition and gut feeling that, you know, he will kick the ball, that ball will automatically go there, right? So experience does matter. Okay. But what I have learned from these two school of thought, that we're going to both are big shots, you know, and you know, even the experts cannot be right always. So I always try to see that, yes, if I make a decision with my intuition, you know, for in the times of uncertainty, okay, what I should do, my learning is that I should triangulate that view with 3 or 4 other people as well, you know, to understand. And what I call it, you know, in fact, it is called putting a believability weightage on that. So for example, if I am an expert on, um, um, for example, when I work in my project, and if I'm working on a, let's say, oncology project, okay, so I would rather talk with 4 or 5 oncologists than a generalist. So, and if generalist is in my board, I would give him less weightage than oncologists, you know, who are who I'll give him more. So I think, you know, you can mix both. You know, of course, the emotional intuition works in times of uncertainty, but I think you also need to triangulate that view with, you know, other experts. Does that
Yes,
little bit answer? Yeah.
absolutely. So it depends very much on the decision, the type of decision one has to make also.
Actually, see, for many of the decisions that you make, you have, if you have a lot of information, you know, to make that decision, then you do not have to use that much of your intuition. But intuition matters more in terms of huge uncertainty, okay, where you do not even know. I'll give you a simple example. What we do is that we try to value early stage assets, okay, of the biotech companies. Now, those assets are in, like, let's say, um, preclinical stage, which is going to take, or maybe clinical stage, which is going to take 5 years to reach the market. Now, if I have to talk about what is the sales they can achieve and so on, right? What I do is that I triangulate the view with some of the experts to understand what is the competitive advantage of this particular product in comparison to others, okay? And based on that, I make certain arguments and, you know, narratives. Now, other school of thought would be that, no, you have to talk with Salesforce people, you know, all, you know, how many hospitals you have to go out to do that. That makes it more complex and more noise in the process, because what is going to happen 5 years down the line, you do not know, right? So less is more in terms of uncertainty, okay? But if you have a lot of information, then of course that helps you to make a better decision anyway.
If I may add my opinion here as well. I mean, I really enjoy very much the way you've broken it down with all the probabilities and everything. But I'm thinking that the more you want an outcome to happen, and this has a lot to do with intuition as well, because it has to do with the with this, I would even call it supernatural ability of a human to gather all their powers when they set their mind to something. Then you become more creative, then you make sure that the outcome that you desire actually happens. So the probability actually increases. So yes, you're measuring these probabilities. And for me, one of the most useful things that you mentioned, Saurabh, was the inversion technique, which is where not to step. So this for sure helps, even if you're setting your mind and you're keeping an eye on the blind spots. But still, the question is, what do you want to achieve? Which outcome do you actually desire? Because then you're working towards achieving it.
Exactly.
But the probability increases, yeah.
Yeah, and exactly the outcome and the payoff that I talked about, risk of ruin. I very much like this line by even Taleb, okay? He talks about, he said in the trading world, they had a very important decision making about the risk. And the rule was, take as many risks as you want, make sure you're in the office tomorrow. So that means, you know, the payoff is so important. You know, you can talk about this one probability and all this, but the risk of ruin is very important. And I think this matters also in any of your professional that you take, that you don't make any decision that ruins you, you know, at least, you know, that is very, very important.
Awesome.
Any other questions I may have? I think, you know, we have right now kind of completed an hour. So I think it's good to kind of stop here, because
Right.
we can keep going on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah.
No, thanks for having me. Thank you.